I turned the volume down on the speakers this time. Hopefully this works a little better. So right now, what this is going to do, excuse me, I have a 1/4 inch ball nose end mill in the spindle, and when I start up, I have on my pendant, I can slow the feed rate down. So I start out slower, and then I turn the dial on the pendant up to increase the speed. So as this ball nosed end mill is going back and forth the way you see it, what it's doing is it's creating a kind of a rounded pocket in the top. That's going to be right in the middle of the handle, and I did that by using Aspire and creating a kind of a pocket slot. And because I don't have a large diameter round bit, but I don't need it, I can do it with this kind of a bit. So I don't remember the speeds and feeds I was running at, probably somewhere around maybe 150, 175 inches a minute. And I don't remember the chip load. As I start getting better at making videos, I think I'll keep some notes and have notes in front of me, and I'll be able to tell you what's going on with the bits. One thing to notice though is if you look at the chips that are coming off that cut, you could see that they're not dust. And this is what I talk about when I talk about chip load. You don't want to be making dust, you want to be making chips. You want those chips to come flying out of there the way that this one is. I don't have my dust control turned on with my boot and everything on there because you wouldn't be able to see the cut at all. So this way here is the best way that I could show you how I'm making that little pocket in there and how I'm making the chips. So again, not dust. In a minute or two we'll be going into the next segment here, what I'm going to do, because that's almost done. And what I did with the piece of wood is I flattened out the bottom and I clamped it down. So the bottom is flat, but the rest of it is just all rough sawn stuff. So over here I'm just changing the bit. I'll take out the ball nose end mill, making that little slot, and I put in a 1/4 inch diameter 2-flute carbide end mill. And what I have to do is make sure that the bit is sticking out from the collet far enough so that I can cut through all of the material without bottoming the collet out onto the workpiece. So I measure it. I think I needed it to be sticking out about 1 1/16, 1 1/8. The piece of wood that's on there is about 1 1/16 thick. Of course, I'm having to use some really nice cherry to do some nice test cutting. This is what I use to zero out my bit. You can see on the front of the blue box there's a dial there, and if you look close enough you could see that the dial is moving. And I'll bring that down really slowly until that dial comes up to 0. When it comes up to 0, that means from the surface of the wood to the top of the gauge, it's exactly 2 inches. So from that I'll go into my Mach 3 control and I'll set my Z to 2 inches. Yes, I know there's all different kinds of electronic devices out there to do this kind of stuff automatically. I'm a little bit picky about what I do, and I like to be able to see the numbers. So yeah, I know it's proven that those touch probes work, and they work well. I used them at work myself on different machines. It's very quick, it's very easy, but it's just my preference. I just happen to like being able to see that number on top. So over here what I'm doing is I'm facing off the top of the wood, just in the area that I need to. I'm not doing the whole thing. And well, I was a little bit concerned here that the end mill might hit the clamps, so I'm moving the clamps out of the way. There's a bunch of things that I did wrong here, and this is probably one of them, is not having a good clamping of the workpiece. A little bit later on you'll see that that workpiece ended up moving around and making a mess, so we'll just let it go. So again, this is still just kind of facing off the top, and now we're going over to the two sides, and we're going to start milling out some pockets to make the steps on the this draw pull. So there's two steps. There's one of them that's a 1/4 inch deep, and there's another step that's a 1/2 inch deep. So this step that it's doing at this moment is 1/2 inch deep, and the step that it was doing just before this one was a 1/4 inch deep. Now if you look at the top, the closest to the screen, you could see that that piece of wood is moving. You see it underneath the clamp there. When I was brushing it off, I didn't really notice it, but then I did, and I went and stopped the machine. So I tried tightening the clamps a little bit. I slowed down the feed rate so it wouldn't be pushing quite so hard, and at this point the damage is already done, but I'm just going to keep going with it anyway, running it at a slower feed rate. Of course, now that the video is speeded up, to me this is a little bit like watching paint dry. So actually this is where the 1/2 inch deep pockets are being cut. So you'll see that in a minute or a couple of minutes when I take it off the machine. So there's like 100 million videos out there of people machining on the CNC machine, and I don't like to cut anything out too much, but again, I still think it's like kind of redundant just watching the machine running back and forth. This is cutting out the piece now, or at least cutting around the perimeter of the handle. I left a little bit of an onion skin underneath so that it would still hold on to the piece of wood. It wouldn't be rattling around, and also I didn't want to cut into my table. So there we go. That's all done. I'll move the spindle out of the way, and I'm going to unclamp and take it out so that you can see what it looks like. So here goes the clamps. I actually did clamp the clamps down pretty tight, but they're off center, and you know, it's like, it's just not the good thing to do. So you can see it didn't cut through when I was tapping the chips out. There's the steps that you can see in there. There's some chips and stuff. The end mill I used was dull. So on my DeWalt scroll saw, I can I'll cut through the side, and then I'll cut along that onion peel stuff in the bottom. Not going to be real careful to try to trim it close, just kind of like slamming it through there just to get the onion peel cut out, and then I'll take it over to the sander after that, and I'll sand up the sides and start finishing it up a bit. Again, it's a little bit of a frustration for me. This was a method that was suggested by somebody to try to do this, and I did it, you know, and it would work okay. It's just a little bit of extra work, and I've got some better methods. You could see that little curved cut in the top. You could see that. You could see the little steps. Of course, it's full of chips and burrs and stuff. It's got to be cleaned up. And then we're going to go over and do some sanding to it on my belt sander. It was interesting. saw this belt sander on, I think it was on Craigslist, as I was just searching around on Craigslist for woodworking tools. So it's a nice belt sander. It's got a 6-inch disc, and it's a 2-inch wide belt, 2-inch by 42-inch belt. Craftsman. It's a 1 horsepower. It's nice. It's got dust collection on the side, but it's only like one of those little small diameter outlets for dust. It sort of kind of works okay. I wasn't using it here only because it's just a little bit of sanding, and my sanding papers probably could have been changed a little bit. It could have been a little sharper. So did a little fast go through there, and here I am. Just I keep tilting it up and looking at it so I could see where I'm at. That's why you see me tilting it quite a bit. So that's that. And there you can see that curve in the top, and then the steps. So now we'll go do a little bit of hand sanding work. So I used some different papers here. The purple one is 220. It's a 3N, and those little yellow things there, those are little sticks that I made myself, and I used a 3M adhesive or some kind of a spray adhesive, and I cut the 220 paper and glued it on to the sticks, and I've been using that stuff for years, and it's great. That green paper there is 60 grit, and the other yellow that I'm folding up there, sanding living daylights out of my my straight edge, that's 100 grit. You can see it on the back. I do a trifold. It's something I've been doing. My father taught me how to do that years ago, back in the 70s, and I like it. It works out well. So just doing a bunch of sanding on this thing, and I don't like the thing is like doing hand sanding like that. It's okay. I don't mind doing it. I like sanding. So the problem with the sanding like this is that I can't get everything all consistent all the way through all the different radiuses and and things of that sort. And also getting a little frustrated with it because quite honestly I can do that with 3D modeling in the CAD and let the machine do all the work of forming all those radiuses and curves. So I wasn't happy doing this, and you'll see my frustration in the end where I just kind of drop it down and say, alright, it's time to move on to the next step. Let me just show you what I went through doing this, and then the next thing that I'm going to do is to create a model, and to do that with some tooling on the machine, and let it go at that. So that's what we're going to do next. So until next time, let's see where we go.